Welcome back to Morning Express, and well, it's time for us to go for the way it is. It is now just about 5 minutes after 7, and let me start by introducing our panel this morning. To my extreme left, we have Senator Mombasa County. Also, he is the Sec-Gen for Wiper Party, and that is none other than Omar Hassan. Great to have you. We missed you last week.
Yeah, I was a bit held up,
Okay.
so I did convey my apologies. I think
We got them, and thank you for your consistency, and I hope you had yourself a good weekend.
Yeah, I had a great weekend this weekend. We had this young group, Sauti Soul, which was in Mombasa. I think an extremely talented group of young people.
Absolutely.
And what happens is what they put into their performance definitely shows that there is an actual deliberate effort by them to meet the standards set internationally. I told them, have you watched Michael Jackson's This Is It? That's the last show he was to perform before he passed on.
Right.
It's like for Sauti Soul, every show for them is the last show. So they put their best. And then on Sunday, borrowing a cue from my brother, where I was at St. James's Catholic Church in Topanga, a great family of followers who had requested through some of their memberships that I joined them that particular Sunday. I had an exciting Sunday with them, part of it. So it was a great weekend.
A good weekend.
Nonetheless.
Fantastic. Well, great to have you. Next, we have Ambrose Sweda, who we also had over with Newspaper Review. But I don't know if I managed to sample how your weekend was and what you got up to.
My weekend was good. I was in Kisumu. I went to congratulate my friend Joshua Witi, who has been elected to be the first bishop of the Anglican Church, the Diocese of Maseno East. So he was having his last prayers at the St. Stephen. And again, that was marking the last prayers at that sanctuary, which was built in 1914 or something. So they are going into a bigger sanctuary, and it was an occasion.
But I hope they'll preserve that one.
Yeah, I also hope so. I hope also. There was Zungus. When you look at it, as I was walking out of it, I was just imagining the Pro Cathedral is still the same as it were, but maybe all those years it was something very magnificent. It's huge because it's still beautiful today. You see this, then the All Souls Cathedral in Machakos. These people still, if it is good today, how was it about 7 years ago?
I was in two very good schools, Mombasa Primary, Mombasa, and Lenana School in Nairobi.
Yes.
So Lenana is excellent architecture.
Yes.
And you wouldn't want somebody to say that we're building a new school on it.
Yes.
Like what annoyed me immensely
Yes.
is the people who went and brought down my old school, the Mombasa European Primary School there, which transformed into Mombasa Primary School, with excellent, magnificent architecture. The layout. Somebody just goes and foolishly brings it down to build an ordinary block of a schoolhouse. The way you just build, cliche. This had a layout. It had the quadrangles. It had the kitchen. It had the staff room. It had the hall. It had, you name it. It was a school, man. That was the swimming pool. It was a rugby pitch in Mombasa Primary. One of the very few institutions that had a rugby pitch. The guys just,
destroyed
brought it down
for no good reason.
Actually,
and the guys from a foundation trying to improve it.
I think the law is such that some of these
architectural marvels must be
and they're beautiful. You look at even the one in Maseno School. Now since Stephen Pro Cathedral, the All Souls Cathedral, you look at some of these schools, the way they were designed. The school I attended,
I went to Nairobi School, and similarly, the old buildings were just fantastic. Even the way they were designed.
Look at Nairobi Primary.
Space, yes. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened.
And then look at the heap of blocks that we are building these days.
Absolutely, that's exactly what somebody did. If a school is run down, just make sure you put back the new tiles. You just redo the wall. The painting. It was not architecturally.
And even their walls were very thick, very thick. So it's not that they
just
collapsed.
brought it down.
All right, moving on to now other institutions away from buildings that, would like to have dealt with. And let me start, first of all, with a question that we asked this morning. And the question, of course, is whether CORD should dump the Occupy IEBC protest for talks. And looking at a survey that is running in the nation this morning, and it says that a study was found, and the question that was asked was, do you support CORD's demonstrations as a way to remove IEBC commissioners? Apparently, 66% of Kenyans said no, 31% said yes, and 3% said they were not sure. So the question here, of course, no longer being the focus as to whether IEBC officers should be in office or not. I think there's a general agreement that they should be something done, because there's no confidence in them having or being fair arbiters of the 2017 general election. So let me start with you, Senator, in terms of should CORD organize themselves and have a change of strategy to now maybe embrace talks?
But if you look at it carefully, CORD is pursuing a multi-pronged strategy. We're going to, I think there's Chepkonga, the chairman of the legal committee, who's now squarely brought the matter before Parliament, and even the legal committee in the Senate, Legal and Human Rights Committee, wants to take up in terms of how to come up with proposals to secure the electoral process. I think not because of, not because we appreciate, as what Weda has said, that previously, that there has been some substantial decline in public confidence. And even if it was about 50-50, I think that's not good enough for an electoral body.
Right.
The electoral body needs almost a pontifical or a Caesar kind of, reverence, where the overwhelming majority of the population will have confidence in its business. So therefore, whichever results that IEBC announces, whether in favor of CORD or in favor of Jubilee, I think there's ready grounds for people to reject those results. Even you might find that Jubilee are the ones rejecting poll results as a consequence of IEBC being in office. So I think in terms of securing the nationhood, I think there are about 4 options. One is to, which is my most preferred, is to appeal on the conscience of the memberships there. Some of them are my brothers, some of them are my elders, some of them are parents. To appeal to their conscience that the waters appear so muddy that purification process is almost impossible. So therefore, in terms of securing the national electoral process and its integrity, they should then pave way and allow a process in a manner that is negotiated. So which brings me now the second one, which is negotiation come dialogue,
right, in
terms of how they exit. The third one is the parliamentary process, which I think if members of the Jubilee administration and its membership in Parliament will start to appreciate that there are fundamental issues, which I had Paul Mwiti articulate yesterday, in terms of integrity issues, in terms of Chapter 6 issues, particularly with some of its memberships, in terms of the allegations of corruption, then it is inevitable that they paved way to allow for a reconstitution of the process. And the third one, which is why people even want to dialogue. People just don't want to dialogue because we sat somewhere and call for dialogue. It's because CORD takes to the protests every Monday. So people want to avert the possibility of a fallout that is almost irredeemable or cannot be managed. So that's why people are asking you to the table. That's why people are talking about these proposals in Parliament. It's because that process that was initiated has brought pressure on people to appreciate that there's need for us to do something about that.
Something to be done. All right, and would just like to see some of what the comments that have been going on. And of course, Nkaiseri is on record saying that if the protests are going to continue, then certainly the security forces are ready. They are charged and ready and equipped to take care of any eventuality of violence. And of course, CORD has been very adamant, saying that their protests are within the Constitution, and they are, so long as they are not violent. But let's see some of the comments that have been going through and just catch up with that. Then I'll hear from Ambrose Weda.
Juzi mlivunja sheria, mlikuwa na court order, mkakuja mkapiga askari na mawe. Hiyo hatuwezi kubali. Na ningependa kukanya. Nilisema tuko na enough tear gas. Enough. Na police hawaja train for a very, very long time. My friend, mkijaribu, tutapatana na nyinyi huko na sheria. Pia, tumenunua vifaa ya kusafisha wale watu hawajaenda shower for siku mingi. Kwa hivyo kama mtu hajaoga kwa nyumba yake, tutakuja tutakupatia good shower, very good shower. Kwa hivyo we meet with you on Monday because naona mnang'ang'ana. I'm waiting for you.
have not seen any rehearsals being conducted by the police in preparation for such control of crowds. It's important they do rehearsals to ensure that the crowd is dispersed peacefully before even they reach the kind of properties they protect. So it's unfortunate that the police will wait inside buildings for the crowd to really come all the way instead of halting them far.
And that, of course, is what has been said so far. And this is in regards to Occupy IEBC, which today being Monday is what we expect is going to be going on. According to court, they say that these protests are going to carry on. But now, based on a survey that's been going on, 66% of Kenyans apparently feel that they should embrace dialogue in exchange for the protests. Maybe the protests have delivered what they were intended to, and 31% say, yes, the protests should continue. But before we continue the conversation, let me now also introduce Murioki Njagagwa, who is the Member of Parliament for Mbere, and thank you for joining us. Karibu sana. But before coming to you, let me hear from Ambrose Weda in regards to the fact that maybe there needs to be a change of tact. I know you previously mentioned, as we were doing the newspaper review, that as much as IEBC officers would like, commissioners would like to stay in office, the fact that there is general consensus that there is no confidence in them being fair, then they should leave. But in terms of CORD now changing tactic,
I think CORD has realized, I think where the CORD seems now to have a problem, they've realized that the process of selecting new commissioners, it is the president who will select, have a bigger say in selecting the panel that will select the commissioners. Therefore, chances that the president would put in people more favorable to him, in other words, they realize they'll be worse off
if they were to have
these people just live like that. So they are now compounding the whole process. They're saying, we want them to go, but we also want to negotiate the process of bringing in the new ones. As to whether or not these commissioners will go, I always tell my classmate Hassan, it is time to get angry. Why? Honorable Raila Odinga received about 5 million votes. That's adults. Therefore, with their children, they're about 15 million Kenyans. And for the last 3 years, he has always been consistently casting aspersions on the integrity of the IEBC. The result is every day he talks, he's spending, consuming the credibility of the IEBC. As we talk now, it is like CORD supporters believe that the Raila and State House, only IEBC is standing in between. With that credibility spent, it cannot be any election that will be considered free and fair. Not because the IEBC people have done anything wrong or can do anything wrong, but because they are referees. The only way out for them is get out. And that is inevitable. The way the CORD is doing it is the wrong way. They should. The fruit is so low. They should just follow the due process. And they'll be surprised. They'll be surprised when they're told, let these guys go. And even these guys, we calculate their salaries up to the time they're supposed to leave in, is it May or June 2017? We say how much? Because what they're interested in, their salaries. Kenya will go.
That's what's keeping them there.
Yes, we give them, and then they leave.
All right, Murioki Njagagwa, in terms of the tactic now maybe needing to change, and the fact that we're in a society, in a community whereby, despite so much publicity and noise against IEBC, they have been headstrong and said that they're not going to, leave their office.
The position that I've seen taking place in the last couple of days is that everybody has taken their stand. If you look at the government side, that the Jubilee side, they're saying, let us follow the due process of the law. CORD on the other side has always insisted, as Wenda said from a long time ago, that IBC's credibility is wanting. They brought in the issue of chicken gate, the issue of corruption, the issue of the BVR systems. And I don't want to give it to them, but it's shaking them. It's shaking the IBC, the institution of the IBC. On the other hand, again now, the IBC, the commissioners themselves, I've seen them on telly, I've seen them on workshops. They're saying we've done nothing wrong. So people are taking positions, and it's not good for this country. So I would request my colleagues on the other side of the fold of the political divide, follow the due process of the law. It is their constitutional right to protest, to hit the streets and protest. But there's a limit to this, because once they go there now, they start destroying property. Like you saw the other day what happened, people were injured, property was destroyed. I know they have always said that a petition was brought to Parliament and it never saw the light of day, but times have changed. Let them bring a petition to Parliament with credible reasons, not just mere hearsay.
Okay, but do you agree, are you in agreement that at the point where we are right now,
Yes.
there needs to be a reconstitution of the commissioners for the IEBC?
So that
He does agree.
Do you agree?
He does agree.
so that
It's a very simple question. You either agree or you don't.
But what he said, Michael, it means that he agrees actually. He says circumstances.
No, but
have
he's here.
changed.
Let him answer. Mr. Jagagwa, do you
Senator,
agree? Do you agree that
on
it's time for them
the
to leave?
information that is coming, let me leave it at let them follow the due process of the law. Let
So
them
do you
bring-
agree that they need to be removed out?
The
There needs to be
commissioners.
something done.
It's not like I saw Hassan
And
over
the
the
thing
weekend.
here,
I saw Hassan over the
let
weekend.
me stop you a little bit. The thing here is no longer, we're not looking at the accusations against them. We're not talking about the chicken gate. We're not talking about the fact that they have been seen to be corrupted one way or the other, or they're in cahoots with the government. The fact remains that there is a good number of Kenyans, a huge number of Kenyans, who do not have confidence in them being a fair arbiter. For the sake of 2017, isn't it time for them to be out
I've
of
seen the
office?
newspapers as I was driving here, and they're saying about 31% of Kenyans are saying no. So there's another 69% of Kenyans who are saying the IEBC should stay. So we are in that position. But for credibility of the due process of electing leaders in next year, let them, I would leave it to their conscience, the Hassan Commission. They can honorably walk out, get their dues, and we appoint other commissioners. Yes.
I think
But I'm
what-
not saying that
you see,
they have
even-
done anything untold wrong that
You
they
see,
must go.
the thing is where
Now
we
it's
are.
about now confidence of Kenyans, how they're going to learn
Yes,
this
where
way.
we are right now, it's not about whether they have done something wrong or not done something wrong. The fact of the matter is a good number of Kenyans, and like Weda has given us figures, are not confident with the IEBC carrying out a free and fair elections. And like Omar Hassan mentioned, it may not even just be the opposition, but should the ruling party right now lose, they may also come out and say, look, we also said that they should go home. And I can quote somebody like Duale and Moses Kuria, who have come out to say that, look, we also don't want the IEBC. Anyway, Hassan.
I think the negotiated process and the proposals that are coming out in Parliament will anchor the legal process. Because any process that kicks out the IBC will have to be a legal process. Even where we are talking about negotiating an exit, it will have to be anchored in law in terms of calculating the dues. But I think here there is a greater credibility issue, not necessarily in the persons, but in the institutions. I can tell you without doubt that there are some of those people in the IBC who are extremely distraught with what is happening, because they are men and women who have been distinguished in terms of public service. They have served this country so diligently in various positions. You know, Yusuf Nzibo, former ambassador, former KRA general, commissioner general, many other issues, many other positions that he's held. Hardly, you know, his name is not propped up in any of these allegations that are so being mentioned. Engineer Sharawe being another person. So I think we need also to be a bit fair in terms of safeguarding the integrity of some of these individuals who have not necessarily had any particular allegations that have been tied to them directly, but we're just saying that the institution of the IBC needs to be reconstituted. You know, also we have to be people who demand fairness, because we don't want also blanket condemnation of a group of people who some probably is unfortunate. I remember I myself was a commissioner. There was a point at which the deputy president and part of his support base went ballistics on us, you know, saying that we must resign, we must be prosecuted for things that I know deep in my conscience that we had no party to. So I think in terms of also part of these allegations where we are condemning people unheard, we need to also navigate the delicate terrain of presumption of innocence, which is a very fundamental ideal of our constitution. So as we negotiate that terrain, then we can have a dialogue and say, yes, okay, IBC, it's an issue about public and national interest that has demanded that you leave, you exit. But there are men and women there who have done extraordinarily well in terms of their careers in public service. And I want to flag out Engineer Sharawe and Ambassador
So
Zibo.
based on the example you've just given us now that there was a number of people that wanted you as commissioners to leave, did you resign?
No, absolutely not.
So you would understand. So you would understand the position of Isaac Hassan.
That's why, because of that particular reason, that's why I am very cautious on how I tread on this matter. You will see even my guard against them has been fairly guarded. You know me, when I decide to take on something,
You do.
it is because I appreciate the situation I was in. And when I was in that situation, I remember a CID official that time called me up and told me, we have just sat in a meeting. You will be summoned and you will be arrested and prosecuted. And Kibaki will be told to suspend you. So immediately that happened, I called the late Mutula. I told him this is what is going to happen. He told me come to my office. I told him this is what I was briefed by a colleague, a friend in the CID. When I went to the commission that very evening, the summon was already there.
Okay.
So coming to the, so what happened, I called Mutula Senior and I told him the summon is here. So he told me come immediately back to my office, and he wrote a letter demanding that I be treated in accordance with the law as a commissioner, as the law stipulates. So at one point I was calling for fair treatment of myself. So it is only prudent that in this situation also I call for the fair treatment of others.
Okay. So you would identify with Isaac Hassan as he sticks to his guns and says, look, I have no reason to resign.
I totally understand his situation. I have been in a situation of that nature before.
All right.
I totally understand.
All right, moving on. Now, one of the other things that has been argued is the fact that changing the faces of the commissioners may not necessarily give us a solution.
In fact, it's not even the changing of the faces. This is another issue we must debate in very critically. The entire process of nominating commissioners as it is now in the Constitution.
Shouldn't we then be concentrating on that before we even ask them to leave? Because even if they leave today, then we're still going to have the same problem.
Is heavily skewed in favor of the government of the day, from the constitution of the panel to the house that endorses it. You know, look what happened to the GSA. You can literally get the person you want. So I think I've seen proposals by Parliament that Code provides two, Jubilee provides two. Being honest, I do not necessarily favor these issues where you TNA bring one, then you create a very fractured institution. So I think we need to develop a process that is credible in terms of its appointative process, in terms of its nominating process. So I think we need to put a few more proposals, and I think with Muriuki and the rest of the people with the who are legal practitioners will not be inadequate in terms of ideas of how we can move the IBC forward.
Weda, what would your suggestion be in terms of how now the next lot of commissioners should be put into office? Because again, we stand to be the same position, even if they leave today and come tomorrow, when we already have the executive favored in terms of choosing the commissioners.
Yes, I can say, number one, that there are two jobs in this country that are thankless: IEBC
and EACC.
Whoever you are, you will be hit when the time comes. So I suggest this. One, I was thinking and saying, look, IEBC commissioners should be put in place in such a way that they only oversee one general election. That is
a one-term office.
One-term office coming in. You come in the middle, you do elections, you prepare yourselves to leave, and a new one comes in. That is one. Two, we need a form of an electoral college to elect the commissioners and the chairman, so that either is not pro-government or pro-position or supporting this, so that we have a kind of a college that gives us these commissioners. It is these colleges that now the interest groups can either elect their representatives to this college, then the college gives us the commissioners, then we move to the next level. That is the way we will be able to build institutions. The Electoral Commission must be built as an institution that functions and runs without individuals, or even if the individuals are not strong or they're weak, it runs. This country will only go forward when we build institutions. Therefore, the way it is today, it favors the president. In fact, that's why we say, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. Let them leave, so that we put, and then we can give chair
I don't
to
think
my
can I say, I don't think it favors the president per se. What happens is we do not expect a parliament that will be so skewed on one side to a point we thought maybe we'll have a parliament that is fairly conscious of its oversight role. Seriously, because it is not unusual for Democrats to reject a nominee of a Democratic president. It's not unusual for Republicans to reject a nominee of a Republican president. So we thought we will have this almost a perfect presidential system. So whereby when the president constitutes a panel, and then after the panel, there is some kind of recruitment process, and then you bring the proposals to Parliament. We thought the evaluation, it will be the critique will be so vigorous in terms of vetting that no president can just assume that you can appoint a commissioner or public officials casually.
What would you suggest then would be a better way to reconstitute it? Because you've just mentioned that even if you're to have two from,
yesterday, the time when I watched the news and my brother Chepkonga had proposed that we have two from Code and two from Jubilee, I was sitting with some professionals in Mombasa, and they're like, what kind of politics is that? What you mean to tell me that you want to have two commissioners who ultimately are reporting to Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto on one side, and another two reporting to Code and Code principles on the other side? Is just creating an institution that is deadlocked. So particularly if it's 2-2, how about the decision-making process? So I go into a commission consciously knowing that I'm a Code supporter or a Jubilee supporter. Is not my idea of fairness or balance. So we will need to have a process. That's why I'm saying I don't have easy answers to that. That is fairly insulated. Maybe, the council has come up with this constituent assembly. What is this constituent assembly in the first place? So I mean, it's the process of public nomination. Maybe people can agree in that negotiations that we look at men and women of character of a certain nature. We bring in Paliash Guy, we bring in Maina Kiai, we bring in all these people who have distinguished themselves in public service.
I think,
and then see how these guys think Paliash Guy is called just because his views, more or less, when Paliash Guy's view or Maina Kiai's view correspond with that of the Code, it's not that they are supportive of Code. It just means that their views are not as similar. That's where one of the things, I remember once Francis Mudaura accused the Commission on Human Rights of being coded, at that time ODM. And I said, look, these are broad human rights principles articulated globally. You will say that also the Human Rights Watch is code. You will talk about the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights as being code because they're all telling you to stop extrajudicial executions. It's not a code position.
Well, it's unfortunate that our politics, I think, dictate and say that he who is not with us is against us, regardless of how balanced they are. Njagagwa?
My take is that, one, the commissioners are too many. That is why at number 9, at 9 commissioners, what they do is some of them go there and imagine that they represent certain interests, not the Kenyan interests per se. So our proposition, or my proposition, is that let us make them about 3 maximum, so that they go there representing Kenyans, not that I'm affiliated because I was appointed by Code-leaning people or Jubilee-leaning people that I must watch their back. So like my colleagues have said, let those that will be nominated, if we ever get there, serve Kenyans. So that we have a fair process, a commission that is trusted by Kenyans, so that we do not have again the issues of what happened 2007, January 2008.
Absolutely.
Because if one party feels that they are unfairly lost, or imagine they're unfairly lost, then they'll hit the street, which is not good. So
all right, I think that's well said, and let's wait and see how today is going to go, being Monday, and whether after today we'll still have other protests going on. But let's move on to...
But before moving on, I've seen a change of track on Code, and especially for my senator here. Today is very reconciliatory, I must say, and I must urge the Code brigade, let us avoid the streets. The Code leader himself. Let us avoid the streets. Let them push the agenda in these forums through other negotiations, but not hurting Kenyans who elected us.
Well, in their defense,
today Hassan has been very, very, very good, reconciliatory, and I believe this is going to trickle down to the other leaders.
I hope someday.
The three-pronged strategy is there. But as I said, Guru Kijagagwa, I do not forget where I come from. I was a commissioner, and I know the public barrage that was unleashed on us to a point of almost annihilist. So I understand the situation of the commissioners. That's why, for me, my clarion call to them has been the escalation of this matter is not to their interest and the interest of the nation. That it will be right and proper and within their conscience to look for an exit. And if they think that we need to provide for them, in fact, for me, I think maybe saying that they are not resigning is providing their highest level of bargain in terms of if we were to finally come to dialogue. You leave, we don't leave, so you have to then find common ground. So for me, I don't think it's about them being necessarily unwilling to exit, but the fact that they also want to provide grounds for negotiation. So one of their demands for negotiation is that we don't leave. If you want us to leave, therefore, you must do 1, 2, 3 things, and we must. I know most of them have 1 or 2 of them have spoken to me. Like, you have tarnished our integrity. We have done nothing wrong. Some of them, in fact, were saying, in a normal contest of elections, probably you will be surprised what their political choice will be. In fact, the Jubilee, when they analyze the commission, in terms of the regional makeup, they look at it as more of code leaning. In fact, I was talking to some members the day before yesterday when we were traveling to Mombasa. I was in the aircraft with them. And he was surprised, why is Jubilee protecting IEBC? In fact, they should tell them to leave like yesterday. Our people are not there, in quotes. That's what they said. So I think there's also that acknowledgement. So when you sit in the position I have sat, being both a commissioner and a politician now, and I can tell you for a fact that I know what kind of pain and agony it took us through when we were put in the similar situation where somebody appeared to have shattered you for the rest of your life, in the sense that what if we were made to exit on account of the issues that were then before us? Will I even have been able to be electable in Mombasa again? So I think the reconciliatory element comes largely on the basis that I was subjected to a process where Mutula Kilonzo stood firm that I must face the due process of the law as provided for in law. So therefore, I think it is only right for me also to sometimes also have a middle ground, that you can continue with all these other protests. But ultimately, there will be a process that will have to facilitate the exit in a manner that anchors itself in the constitutional framework.
All right, I want us to move on to something else now in the interest of time, and I'll come to you, Muriuki Njagagu, and this is in regards to members of parliament and Senate who seem to have been having a war, and this is in regards to senators not going for the gubernatorial seat.
He does not support that.
Let's hear first of all if you are one of those who support that particular motion.
I don't know where that came from. Actually, I saw it as a surprise. Everybody has a constitutional right to fight for the position that they wish and want in this country. It is anchored in our constitution. So when I hear that a committee of parliament sat down and said that because senators have been oversighting the counties, that they do not have a right to contest in the next elections as governors, that one is totally misplaced. Okay. Whoever came out with that proposition actually missed the boat. Personally, let every man or woman fight for whatever position they want, so long as they're not barred by any criminality, Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Within the requirements.
If you're within the confines of the Constitution, go ahead, take a pledge. I mean, we are the electors. Give us your manifesto, then we shall elect you. Because what they're doing is, we are creating bad blood between the Senate and the Parliament for unnecessary reason. Somebody wakes up in the morning and thinks of an idea, brings it to the committee. The members of the committee think that it suits the day, and then it is brought to Parliament. I've not seen those recommendations, but I've been seeing them in the newspapers. But personally, I would not support such a proposition.
All right, Weda?
That's a non-issue because you need a referendum to change how you constitute these houses. So to bar anybody from contesting, you need actually to amend the constitution. So I think those that committee, they must have just been sitting to earn allowances. They finished the agenda, so they would say, what next? Otherwise, that's a non-issue. Anybody would contest any position. And if you want to change that, call for it. They should go and ask Okoa Kenya. That even getting the name is very difficult. And now, where is your counterpart of ODM Secretary General? He seems not to be in the protest. And then you'll be claiming Jubilee has paid him.
All right, I'm sure I said.
Well, now that Wenda has mentioned about Okoa Kenya, Okoa Kenya. I saw Hassan yesterday, and Hassan,
you didn't.
He was saying, look, gentlemen, I told even my committees, can we save this thing? It is not about morality. It's a strict legal confines. If the signatures are not adequate, that's
They're
it.
not adequate.
But not the chairman
even
saying that
Which is why
Okoa
I
the
said-
signatures.
Yeah.
Now
They didn't
Okoa
sign.
Kenya.
I signed. In fact,
You at least you signed.
I was listed as one of the few senators who, had
Who
signed,
never signed.
Who signed.
When
And
they
I
design,
feel-
they said,
Yeah, so
they have
number
designed,
two,
nearly all these people
I
design.
signed that book when the book that I signed on. I think mine was the first signature. But number two, I think I agree with them. I saw Jorge Vaya on TV, and to use Ahmed Nasser's words, I was like, where is this guy smoking? You know, so seriously. So I mean, I was like, how?
teeth
You know,
at all, like,
even
doesn't
if you want to trivialize debate, I think that's the height of triviality. I think you do not do that type of thing. Even if you want to spite another chamber, even if you want to show that you have some kind, you sat in a meeting, as you put it, as Weda puts it, and under an allowance. Let also the outcome of those meetings appear
productive.
to be or that which meets the basic minimum of common sense. But I can tell you, I've had members of the National Assembly. In fact, some of them tell us passionately, it's just that they were serving in this current house, but some of them do feel that the National Senate needs to be given more mandate as we reorganize and reconstitute these houses. You know, maybe make it a smaller Senate, make the National Assembly smaller, but you know, give the thorax so that people can be able to execute their mandates as per the dictates of the Constitution.
Okay. Does that worry you, the content that we get sometimes from our legislators, the fact, you know, the quality of our leaders, if that's what they're going to debate, something that's not even within the
no, it
Constitution?
doesn't. What I've kept on saying in this forum, that the MPs, the current MPs, history will judge them very harshly. Now they have passed a law protecting themselves.
one here.
This is my classmate, and in this one you will be judged very harshly. They have passed a law protecting themselves from what they have done when they know very well that they have earned some salaries illegally, and we will be claiming. Sometimes what they do is so bad that you wonder whether we elected them or they elected themselves. They have done very well in certain quarters, but in other, especially when it comes to money and power over the Senate, they run mad. Power on money, they also run mad. But other areas, they have done very good. They need you, when you go back, just preach to them to calm down on money. And then the Senate is here to stay. Let us know that. And the devolution requires the Senate. It is only that we need the Senate to be more, they're more organized, more disciplined when the lower house is more rough and rowdy. The Senate just needs to be more vigorous. It is a place that you will see it one day in our democracy when a president is supposed to be impeached. That is when people will realize the Senate is a big thing.
Let me come to Muriuki Njagagwa, and maybe you can give us an audit of your colleagues, because it seems like, well, the country is generally losing confidence in our legislation.
Are you saying we also resign?
With time, you may have to.
Well, I can't
You're
sit.
resigning next. We're all resigning next
I
year.
can't sit as judge of my own colleagues. I believe we've done well, given the
No, but
circumstances.
will we ever get to a point?
But you see,
in
when
this
Wenda
country
sits
where
here
we
and
can
says
call a
that
spade a
we
spade?
are rogue, we are rowdy, and in the same breath he says again we have done well in some
In
quarters.
something, yes.
You know, he is brewing hot and cold at the same time. What I know is that this is a new constitutional dispensation. This is the first parliament and the Senate that has come in now to basically operationalize the constitution, the new constitution. So we are navigating murky waters, new territories, virgin areas, and we are doing well. My little beef with maybe my colleagues is that we tend to look down upon the Senate. But that is not our problem. It's a problem of the previous parliament. Because many of the senators now, some of the senators now were in that parliament. But they literally whittled down the powers of the Senate for reasons that I do not know. We are very eminent personalities, good lawyers, eminent persons in the Senate. But I don't know whether at some point they never thought that they would find themselves in the Senate. But they clipped the powers of the Senate. So it lets Senate now reclaim its position. Like in matters of, I would say, I sat in the budget committee and I'll sit in the budget committee. And I've always said, gentlemen, let us give the Senate some funds so that they can dispense their duties freely and comfortably. But some parliamentarians will say, no, the senators do not need any kitty. So, my friends here, reclaim your position. In democracies elsewhere, the Senate is usually the upper house.
The upper house.
But
So,
you
my
see, one
friends-
thing I must admit, even as a senator, is that there was a misstep in terms of the legal and constitutional authority of the Senate. So I think that's why from day one, every referendum bid, from the one by the governors, Pesa Mashinani, Okoa, Kenya, the Senate-driven referendum, are all unanimous about the fact that we needed to up the mandate of the Senate and strengthen its legal authority. Even by Mheshimiwa's own rendition, he does admit that there was a misstep, even by some of those who sit in the Senate, who whittled it down in terms of its authority deliberately, thinking that they were not going to sit in that Senate. So you can only claim what is legally provided. You cannot, I think the senators have claimed a certain moral space and a certain political authority or stature that maybe just gives more thorax to the institution of the Senate. But when it comes to legal authority, there needs to be some amendments or fundamental, reorganization so that we can be able to give the Senate the thorax. Another misstep we've had is how we have initiated our county governments. Rather than initiate units of accountability, we have initiated units of corruption, units of excess of usage of power, units of small little Kanu regimes, of the yesteryears, 47 of them. And everybody, if you look at the way governors speak sometimes, they're so, like when I talk to my brother Munya, every time I see him speaking, it's like he's scolding us for not understanding them. It's just, I look at him, I'm like, cool down, my brother. People do not understand you sometimes. But all the time before, he was sitting anywhere, he thinks everybody else is wrong and only the governors are right. That, every report by the Auditor Generals, all the reports by the COG are anti-devolutionists. They're the only pro-devolutionists, not COG, but Director of Control of Budget. All reports about them are false. The only reports that are true are the ones that come from the governor, the mouth of the chairman. So I think that's the wrong concept. You must allow a level of oversight. You must allow accountability. In fact, you must live with the spirit of what these were supposed to be units of service delivery, and not just cliche politics that you're going to tell your people you've not had a borehole and a toilet for a long time. Look at my magnanimity. I'm launching it for you now. So devolution is working. That is not what devolution working is about. It's about having a vision. Implementing programs of social justice, which are the objects of devolution. So I think there was a misstep, even in how, what do they call transitional authority, ended up giving all these men and women some cars and motorcades and some busybodies they call advisors. And it was a total, collapse or misstep.
All right, as we wind up, because time is against us, there was also an incident in Mombasa talking about the quality of leaders. And I'd like us to just refresh on some of the things that happened, and maybe Hassan Omar will tell us what's going on in Mombasa. But let's start with that, where there was a bit of, I don't know whether to call it rowdiness. Here we go.
We are going to stand firm for our liberty. Coastal Province is a province of all Kenyans, and Mombasa County is a county of all Kenyans. There is nothing like up country. There is nothing like native in Mombasa County. The nativity of the country is the people of Kenya.
If you were not here, they should have continued the assembly. Is it fair for a big speaker like him to do such thing?
All right, we didn't get the actual part where we have the violence, but maybe Hassan Omar, you can fill us in on what was going on and really the way forward.
I think this was bound to happen. For a long time, the executive in Mombasa has treated the county assembly literally like with a leash, like a postal institution. That you must conform with a certain framework that is given to you. You must always pledge loyalty to the executive, and literally undermine the role of the county assembly. And to a certain extent, certain forces were always used to curtail, the kind of the debate and liberties that will be allowed, the free exercise of speech within the county assembly in terms of legislative work. One of the reasons standing orders protect us, my brother, is that they say even in that chapter on Parliament, there shall be freedom of speech, meaning everybody shall speak freely and articulate issues so freely. So at least we'll have allowed that as a boiling point for all our views to be articulated. So I think that straitjacket finally had to come off. We're in an election year. People are fighting over all small things. I heard the theory that why, or the reasons they wanted to remove the speaker is they refused to admit to certain bills that would have favored, the executives. They wanted control of the county service board in terms of recruitment and the county assembly service board. So you hear the whole issues are non-issues in terms of the actual policy and framework that drives Mombasa forward. But everybody knows that apart from 3 or 4 county assembly members, that is a very compliant. You know, there are 2 extremities of county assemblies. One that is like Makueni, always fighting, and then one which is fully compliant. Did you see that the next day when they all came together and said how united they were Sijui team, whatever they were hugging and kissing again, because you know they don't know, because they have not used democratic exercise of how to manage their affairs. So it was all out. There's really no debate. So I think these issues were bound to come, and I think it's important, but no level of political disagreement can degenerate to that type of fighting.
I think they are learning from their big brothers. On 2 occasions in Parliament, I've seen scuffles in Parliament. When I was never a parliamentarian, when I wasn't a parliamentarian, I never thought such things would happen in Kenya. Parliament and chambers all over the world are areas that you should go and articulate. Speak for the people. We are not sent there to go on, it's not a boxing ring. This is not a Tyson versus whoever match. If you have an issue, articulate it in a sober manner, listen to the other fellow. The essence of conversation or communication is I listen to you. I hear what you're saying. But when it comes to scuffles, we are parents. I mean, what message are we sending out to our children? The world at large, that if you disagree on a bill, if you disagree on an issue, then it is physical. You go physical. For me, that is not democracy. That is the rule of the jungle. So what happened in Mombasa is quite unfortunate. I would not wish it for any other assembly. It's like what happened in Parliament some other time. But let them sober up.
Is to allow now the processes to take fold. They must punish this type of behavior if they must be able to bring decorum.
Right.
If these things were ignored and you know, people who occasioned damage to public property, because that mess is public property, it was broken. I don't think that the MCA must be allowed to get away with it.
Right.
He must be charged every
yes,
time.
and that's where I was coming, in terms of when things like this happen, the reason why they are likely to recur is because there's no consequences. You don't suffer any consequences out of it.
It is true. In fact, let me clarify. My friend who was saying I'm blowing hot and cold. Your parliament is a parliament which is on record that female MPs, some of them have removed their pants and threw it on other people.
That's a rumor.
Some of them are pouring water on others. Some of them are sitting down when we are honoring our heroes who are in Somalia. That's the height. And then apart from Wandai, who was misled by his colleagues and he was thrown out and now has lost the salary, these are the people, the consequences are very minimal. Therefore, they keep on doing it. There should be a mechanism, a law, where if you behave outside
that particular
law, then there
and the law is already there.
It is there.
It is already there.
Yes, so that we do not have this kind of thing. My worry with this behavior is how it destroys the children, the young people. Imagine this is the MP who comes and you see them fighting, the MCA comes, and that's the one we worship in the village. In the village, these people are very great. Then they behave like this. It is distorting the psyche of our society, of our children. And that is where the problem is. You look at your Mombasa, somebody talking about Mombasa is not for us. A leader who talks like that contravenes Chapter 6 of the Constitution. He contravenes the Leadership and Integrity Act. And there's many NGOs who are always there. Why? These are the people you take to court and they are removed from office.
But one thing I wanted to say is, when I got into politics in Mombasa, one of the things I was told, you have money. And then the next thing is, lazima uwe na vijana. Meaning there are people in this country who think this is a banana republic, that they have set up a structure for violence. So what you've seen there is nothing unusual. It is this ubabe wa kisiasa that manifests itself in violence. So therefore, in fact, their supporters also rag outside there. So what is happening, even one of those who you showed speaking is not an MCA, the first man who talked about native and vis-a-vis. I think the Mombasa has been very polarized right now by the policies, the exclusivist policies of the county governor. So people have gotten into little factions here and there. You hear the Luya saying we're going to run a governor. This was a meeting to decide what next. These ones are saying we are country. Those ones are saying we are Muslims, and those ones are saying we are Christian. Polarization, when you use small ideas to manage the affairs of people, then you get small little interests now that emerge. So I think what happens is there are people in this country, and Marie Kinjagagwe is in politics, who think, and they have monopoly over, and you know that person. Kuna kijana front line aitwa Michael Gitonga. He's the one disrupting all meetings and beating everybody. Why the state does not take action, points to the fact that the people realize that there are no consequences. The minute sometimes they are arrested, people make calls to police stations and they are released. So I think unless we deal with this political hooliganism, I think we will never have a democracy where people, the only clash is that of ideas.
Okay, Muriuki, I don't know what you'd see as the way forward, especially to deal with some of these things that should not really be happening, yet they still continue unpunished.
You know, the Constitution, I think, says there should be a body to oversight, I think, even Parliament. And I remember when there was leadership in Mombasa about a year ago, the Speaker of the National Assembly was very clear that a kind of an ombudsman needs to be in place to watch over Parliament. But we have the committee, I think, on privileges. When people go log in Parliament, they are summoned before that committee. The charges are read out to them. There's a kind of a hearing, and then they explain themselves out, and what do we call it? Justice is meted against the culprit. But of course, I believe when an institution is oversighting itself, there's always that feeling of, he's one of us. Let us let us not be too harsh on him. Tomorrow it could be me. And I guess, but there must be an outside, there should be an outside body. Because this again is a clear contravention of Chapter 6. I mean, what are you portraying in public?
That's the work
oversighting
of the Senate.
the oversighting.
Yeah, oversighters. Then
So
I
the
think we'll
Senate,
have to wind it up right there,
the
gentlemen.
oversighting.
Thank you very much. I'd like to read some of the comments that are coming through. Hassan Omar, Ambrose Weda, Njagagwa, you are very sober debaters. I like the way you articulate issues impartially. And I hope, and I was about to mention that I hope with our Kenyan politics, we can graduate to a point where, despite the fact that you're part of a certain side of the divide, when something is wrong, you're quick to say that it is wrong.
Isaac Ruto made the best remark I've ever heard politically. Just if your adversary holds another idea, does not make that, the same idea, doesn't make that idea a bad idea. So if, let's say today, I hold an idea that I think court should do things in a certain way or vice versa, it doesn't make that, because it is held by Jubilee, doesn't make it as a bad idea. So I think people must also learn to navigate this democratic terrain. And divergence is one of the most important ingredients of debate and democracy. All
right, thank you very much. That is Senator Mombasa County Omar Hassan, also the Wiper Party Secretary General. We also have Muriuki Njagagwa, who is Member of Parliament for Mbere. And finally, we have Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. And just a quick check on the poll today. The question was, should court dump Monday protests on IEBC for talks? And we have 30% who said yes, they should, and 70% who said no. So it looks like the majority still are in for the protest. Well, today is Monday, and let's see how that is going to go. We're going to wind up this section of the show right about here, but do stay with us. We've got some news updates coming up at exactly 8 o'clock, and later on, we have Robin Toskin with Sports Chat. Do stay with us right here on Morning Express.
Wow, Isaac Hassan is in trouble.
Thank you, gentlemen.